going on, everyone? My name is Ghiman Mckinney, or you can just call me Juice because that is my nickname. A lot of people, including myself, feel that the 2020 NFL Draft is one of the deepest wide receiver drafts in a long time. It's one of the deepest wide receiver drafts in decades. A lot of scouts feel that you can get starting, impactful level wide receivers in the second, third, and even fourth and fifth round. I am actually behind that. I really do believe there's a lot of good wide receivers in this draft, okay? A lot of NFL scouts are raving about the depth at wide receiver that this draft will provide these NFL teams. And I'm behind it. I believe in the hype, okay? But I will say this. I do believe when it comes to the draft, you should get the best bang for your buck. And what I'm trying to say is sometimes that means passing on a wide receiver in the first round. Now, I will say, if you feel there's a wide receiver on the board in the first round that is the next Calvin Johnson, then by all means make that pick. If you feel there's a Julio Jones in the draft, if you feel there's a DeAndre Hopkins in the draft, then by all means go draft that wide receiver in the first round. I am actually all in when it comes to paying a number one wide receiver. I will overspend a little bit of money to keep a number one wide receiver on my team. But I will say, I do actually think you can find those types of wide receivers in the second, third, and fourth round. And I would actually advise some teams to take advantage of the depth of this wide receiver draft this year. I'm not against drafting wide receivers in the first round. I just want to get the best bang for my buck. And I will say that the teams that always come away as winners in the draft are teams that get the most bang for their buck. Teams that maneuver the board the right way. The Patriots, the Seahawks, the Colts, the Packers. They don't overvalue positions, and they will try to find value late in the draft, and they will not overdraft players. If they can get, let's say, a great linebacker in the second round, they're not going to reach for them in the first round. They will trade back, and I do believe in that philosophy, and I will say that I truly do believe you can find a Michael Thomas or a Julio Jones in the second and third round, and I would advise if you are a team that needs offensive line help, or if you're a team that needs defensive line help or something like that, draft the offensive lineman, draft the linebacker, draft the defensive back before you actually draft the wide receiver. Let's take a look at the top 10 leading receivers as far as yards go from this past year. And I will put this graphic on the screen for all the listeners on YouTube. Looking at the top 10 leading receivers from this past NFL season, 6 of these 10 guys were not first round picks. Michael Thomas, he led the league in receiving yards. He was not a first round pick. He was a late second round pick. Chris Godwin, not a first round pick. Travis Kelce, not a first round pick. Keenan Allen, not a first round pick. Kenny Golladay, not a first round pick. Jarvis Landry, not a first round pick. Please note that I did include Travis Kelce in this so-called test, I would say, because he's basically acting as a receiving tight end. You know, he's not much of a blocker. Okay, he's arguably the second best tight end in all football. But again, he's a pass catcher. I figured just add him to the list. We're not going to make the adjustment. But either way, that just goes to show you can get very good pass catchers past the first round. That just goes to show you right there. In fact, the top 5 leading wide receivers from this past year that were rookies, so the top 5 leading rookies in receiving yards, guys that were rookies last year, okay? A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, and Darius Slayton. Guess what? All 5 of those wide receivers were not first round picks. What does that tell you? If you see a wide receiver that you think that might be a little bit of a reach if we take him in the first round, guess what? Stick with your gut. Don't take him in the first round. You can wait till the second, third, and fourth round to find legit pass catchers. You don't need to find a legit number one wide receiver in the first round. You can wait till the second, third, and fourth round. Wide receivers grow on trees. It's just like the running back position. I'm not saying you shouldn't try to find a number one wide receiver or a number one running back. I'm just saying you can find these guys later in the draft. And I have a question to ask you guys. How good is a wide receiver if your quarterback is trash and can't get the ball to you? How good is the wide receiver if your defense can't get off the field? The offense can't do anything if the defense can't get them back on the field. How good is a wide receiver if the offensive line can't block for the quarterback? Okay, look at Cleveland from this past year. Baker Mayfield and that passing offense, they struggled. The Atlanta Falcons from this past year, their offense struggled because they had a bad offensive line. So, when it comes to football, I truly believe that quarterback play, defensive line play, offensive line play, and sometimes secondary is much more important than a wide receiver. And what I mean by saying this is that sometimes it's best to take the pass rusher in the first round. Sometimes it's best to take the offensive lineman in the first round over the wide receiver, because as far as wide receivers go, their success depends on so many other positions, okay? And let's look at the 2015 NFL draft, because a couple years ago, people were saying that the 2015 draft was the next great wide receiver draft. They were saying this wide receiver class is so loaded. And as far as the wide receivers that were taken in the first round of the 2015 draft, the only wide receiver that was taken in the first round of that draft that was actually worth his draft pick was Amari Cooper. And even at times, I look at him in Dallas and I say, he disappears in big games. Why did Amari Cooper have 0 catches versus the Patriots last year? Why did he not show versus the Eagles in a must-win game? Amari Cooper, Kevin White, Devontae Parker, Nelson Aguilar, and Brashad Perryman were all of the wide receivers taken in the first round in the 2015 NFL draft. 5 of those 6 guys were not worth their draft pick. Kevin White, bust. Devontae Parker just got nice this past year. He was in his 5th season this year. This was the first time that he reached 1,000 yards, okay? Nelson Aguilar drops a lot of passes, is a number 3 option on most teams, and Brashad Perryman's a nice player, but he's not worth a first-round pick. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention Philip Dorsett. Guess what? He's entering his 6th season in the NFL. He's already on his 3rd team. He could not work with Tom Brady and Andrew Luck. That's bad. So don't reach for wide receivers. History shows that it's not a good idea to do so. In fact, let's go back to 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019 and evaluate all the wide receivers taken in the first round. And I'm going to prove to you guys why taking wide receivers in the first round at times is just a mistake. In 2016, Corey Coleman, Will Fuller, Josh Doctson, and Laquan Treadmill were all the wide receivers taken in the first round. Corey Coleman is a 3rd option on most teams. Will Fuller's good, but he's never healthy, and he's at most a number 2. He's not a number 1 wide receiver. He's just not. He's not Julio Jones. He's not Michael Thomas. Josh Doctson is an absolute bust, and Laquan Treadmill was the 3rd or 4th best wide receiver on his own team this past year. Sometimes reaching for these guys is not a good idea. Sometimes drafting first-round wide receivers doesn't work. In 2017, Corey Davis, Mike Williams, John Ross, they were all taken in the first round. All of them were overdrafted. Corey Davis, he's not worth a top 10 pick. Mike Williams, he's good when healthy, but not worth a top 10 pick. And John Ross, he's a bust at this point. In 2018, DJ Moore, he was a late first-round pick. Okay, I can understand taking him in the first round. I don't think that he's an elite number 1 wide receiver, but I do think that he is underrated, and I will say he's Carolina's best wide receiver. Okay, I can live with that. Calvin Ridley kind of has disappointed in Atlanta, but again, he was more of a late first-round pick. I can live with that. But in 2019, the only 2 wide receivers taken in the first round were Marquise Hollywood Brown and N'Keal Harry. And I like Marquise Hollywood Brown, but I'm not sure if he can ever become a number 1 wide receiver, and N'Keal Harry really struggled his rookie year. So, when looking at 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, the last 5 seasons, okay? Last 5 seasons, only 4 wide receivers out of 16 taken in the first round actually lived up to their pick. Those guys were Amari Cooper, DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, and Marquise Hollywood-Brown. And I can make the argument that Calvin Ridley and Marquise Hollywood-Brown, you could probably have gotten them in the second round, and I would feel much better about them as players if I got them in the second round. Also, wide receiver is a tough position to evaluate. Outside of the SEC and the Big Ten, what conferences play defense? The Pac-12 plays some defense. The Big 12 plays no defense. And the ACC outside of Clemson is a joke. One of the reasons why some of these wide receivers are busting at a much higher rate, in my opinion, is because it's hard to evaluate the position. It really is. It's much harder to separate at the next level. Defensive backs are much smarter. They're better. They're faster. And let's be real. Unless you play at Ohio State, LSU, Auburn, Clemson, Alabama, you don't see a whole lot of great defensive backs. You just don't. Okay? And in college, are you running the full route tree? Because some college players just run go routes. Some guys just run one or two routes that they feel comfortable about. Okay? One of the reasons why NFL wide receivers at times struggle as rookies is because they have to get acclimated in a real offense. The route tree is much bigger in the NFL. You have to learn so much more about the schematics of football. In college, sometimes you can get away with just being a great athlete and jumping over people and outrunning defensive backs that know they're toast when they see you on the field. So my point is, I'm not saying wide receivers are not valuable. What I'm trying to say is, be careful when it comes to drafting wide receivers in the first round, because sometimes a lot of these guys get overdrafted and overvalued. Okay? Quarterback play is more important. Offensive line play is more important. Defensive line play is more important. I can argue that the secondary is more important than wide receivers. And ultimately, history shows that you can get elite level wide receivers in the second, third, and even fourth round. Heck, Antonio Brown, one of the greatest wide receivers of my generation, he was a 6th round pick. So, as far as this draft class being super deep when it comes to wide receivers, NFL teams, I got news for you. Take advantage of that, because I'm going to tell you something right now. The smart teams like the Patriots, the Seahawks, the Colts, the Packers, I guarantee you they're going to maneuver the board. They're going to get the best bang for their buck. And the not so smart teams are going to overdraft these players and these wide receivers. They're going to overvalue them. And a couple years from now, I'm going to be saying, man, that guy was just flat out overdrafted. Wide receivers are great, but make sure you get the best bang for your buck when drafting them, especially in the first round. Be sure to comment where you agree with me and disagree with me. Love to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching this video today. Please also note that the Juiciest Sports Podcast is not just a YouTube channel. It is available on all podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts. Also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this content with all your friends. This podcast is my favorite thing in the entire world right now. It is my passion. And I want more people to listen to this podcast. I really want this podcast to grow. Also, a fun fact about me is that I want to go into the sports broadcasting and media world once I graduate from the University of Toledo, a college in Northern Ohio. I currently am a freshman there right now. I am looking to become one of the next great sports broadcasters and analysts out in the world. And I potentially would like to start my own network if this podcast really truly grows. Or if I fall short of that goal, I would love to work for a big time network like ESPN or Fox Sports 1. I am open to all networks. So if you believe in my dreams and you see or hear my passion through the screen, be sure to tell all your friends about the Juiciest Sports Podcast. Stay motivated, you guys. Have a God bless day, and I'm out.